Hello everyone and welcome back to Backlot Banter. My name is Tucker Hazell and this is my co-host Tanner Dykstra, who I saved from a life of poverty when he was a child. And today we're here to talk about Wuthering Heights. It is the new film, it's the talk of the town, and we're here to give you our thoughts on it. But of course, if you have seen the film, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments section below the video and subscribe and like the video and join our Discord server where you can talk to us about all of the, Tanner, there's so much to dig into here, but we are here to give our thoughts. Tanner, let the floodgates be open. I know you actually have many thoughts on this movie, so let's talk about it.
I do. I do have a great many thoughts on Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights, and I think I kind of want to start there because
the air quotes around the logo. You mean?
Yes, exactly. Well, yeah, and by extension, this as an adaptation because a great amount of the criticism online that I have seen has been rooted in the fact that this movie is, for intents and purposes, an adaptation of Emily Bronte's novel. A novel that I have not read. I assume, Tucker, you have not read.
No.
But I've learned a lot about this novel, over the last few weeks or whatever, in the lead up to this film, in the discourse cycle as it's getting spooled up. And from my knowledge of that book, I will say this, and I'll just lay this as a groundwork to just get this out of the gate and kind of ground it as something that.
What's he gonna say, people? What's he gonna say?
I will say that
there's so much lead up to this. This better be good.
This is it's not that crazy for me to say that this is unabashedly, undeniably a sacrilegious adaptation of the Bronte novel.
Sure.
It is just utterly removed and disconnected from any themes or ideas or context or complexity that is there in that novel.
Yeah, as far as you know.
as far as I know, from everything I know, even broad stroke stuff, there was all sorts of discourse about the racial identity of the Heathcliff character and then subsequent casting of Jacob Elordi. Yeah. Anything there except for the very, very broad ideas of Kathy and Heathcliff being characters who have a sort of toward connection is gone, I would say. So I'm just gonna throw that out there, that is a completely fair criticism of the film that cannot be disputed. That being said, Tucker, I liked watching Wuthering Heights. I think it more so than Emerald Fennell's two previous films, which I certainly have my reservations with at the very least. Wuthering Heights seems to me a lighter, sillier kind of affair than those films are.
Maybe I don't.
I view this as a ridiculous movie.
Here's that. Let me lay out my thoughts. I'm a fan of Emerald Fennell's movies. You and I have had a chance to review both of them. Promising a Woman, one of my favorite movies of the decade so far. Just one of my favorite movies, period. I really loved Saltburn when I saw it in theaters. It's not one I've really thought too much about, but I remember being a very enjoyable experience for me. And Wuthering Heights, I think, retains a good amount of those elements that I like. I do think there is that sort of campiness to it. It has the same level of visual intrigue that, of course, we'll get into. Themes of exploring sexuality and relationships. This is a constant throughout all three of these films. But the characters just suck. They are not only mostly bad people, but they're not very interesting bad people. I'll love a villain story. I'll love someone who I'm not supposed to like, but I'm able to find engaging. I don't find the characters engaging. Our core two are the ones that get the most depth, but even then, not too much depth.
Yes.
And then and the supporting cast is they're one note. I just find them so goddamn boring.
Flimsy.
And so I found myself just continually getting more and more disconnected from the stakes of the story. I think it actually starts off very strong. I like the opening section of them as children. I like their sort of back and forth when they're actually at Wuthering Heights before the new husband character has entered the picture. But as they separate, I'm I don't really think I actually care about either of these characters in the context of when they're apart, and they actually spend most of the movie apart. And then when they come back at the end, I'm this just then they just feel like totally different people. They feel really bratty, and of course that's the point. But I'm like, you just feel
Mhm.
simple. You don't feel human. There's nothing behind these
Sure.
eyes. They like it feels like they exist only to fawn over one another, and that's like I understand that there's like maybe a point to that, but
Mhm.
I don't find their relationship compelling, and I don't find their stakes compelling because they just feel like
Sure.
jackasses that like neither of them I'm engaged by, and so at the end of this movie, and Tanner, so I was going to give it like a positive score as I was like
Uh-huh.
wrapping it up, and then the
Yep.
movie ended, and I saw the credits roll, and I did a long, slow exhale through my nose. I'm like, this is not a positive movie for
Okay,
me.
so I think I understand a lot of where you're coming from, and I will sort of take what you're saying and interpolate it into like why I again. It is so strange for me to try and put a finger on why I liked this
That's what this
because
is for.
usually I don't like this kind of thing, and it really made me lock into like why people like the recent sort of outpour of like fan fiction adaptations
Sure,
and
sure,
and
yeah,
things like that. You understand what I'm saying? Like romantasy or like light
sure,
romance books,
yeah, yeah,
beach
yeah,
reads, those kind of things. We've been seeing a greater dearth of those be adapted into movies and TV shows and become big hits as movies and
sure,
TV shows. And they're not works that I am especially engaged in or that I watch.
yeah,
But to me, Wuthering Heights activates what I assume are
yeah,
the very same activators for
yes,
people who see
yes,
those kinds of things. They are, characters who act in very melodramatic ways,
correct.
and especially for Kathy and Heathcliff, they never. I think it's kind of interesting that they never really graduate out of this teenage mindset.
No, definitely not. Yeah,
They are petulant teenagers. It is. I said this a couple of times to our friends who I saw the film with. It is the messy bitchification of the
sure,
Wuthering Heights story.
sure,
That these are ultimately just two people who are in a situationship. If I can use some Gen Z lingo, some
sure.
TikTok lingo here, that they just can't get out of their own way. And extenuating circumstances continue to keep them apart, whether that be the Victorian England power structure or the
Yeah,
marriage or Kathy's pregnancy or whatever. Some of these more serious than others, of course,
hmm,
as a reasonable thing to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't be sleeping with this guy. But
yes.
still, it is like all of it is operating at a level of like ridiculous melodrama that I couldn't help but be like, this is kind of fun to
Yeah, yeah,
watch.
and I totally get that, and I think that is as I'm watching it, I'm like, I get who this is made for, and it is
Yeah.
nailing that. It is
Yeah.
nailing the
Yes.
target audience that it's going for. I personally have a tough time with melodrama, just in general.
Yeah.
I find uh, a touch of humor. Not that this movie doesn't have a touch of humor, but I don't know if the characters really have a touch of humor. I think the movie, the presentation, the
So
directorial
Emerald
vision,
Fennell
yeah,
has a touch of humor, of course. We
correct.
see
But
that in her films, yeah.
yeah, I would say this is the least comedic of the three of them.
Certainly,
And
yeah.
I think I that humor from characters and between characters really helps me engage with people and their dynamics with one another, and I don't think this movie really has that, because again I think the characters are pretty one note, and that's gonna be like my overall criticism of this movie is I just don't
Mhm.
think the characters are particularly well written. I don't think the script is very good, but
Mm.
beyond that is I just don't think again there's not much going on behind those eyes. Like there's just nothing really rattling around in like these characters' heads. They don't have layers. They have like one singular purpose. They serve in the story, and like yeah, they'll
Mhm.
have like a little bit of a different dynamic with whatever character is in the room with them. But like I don't know. I don't find the characters engaging, and so I can't buy
Mhm.
into the melodrama. If I was really like taken by ooh the situation is fascinating and I believe in this person and I want them to like succeed or fail, either one. I'm like, I just
Right.
don't really care what happens to these people because they don't feel like people.
Sure, sure. Well, Admiral Fennell's films always kind of operate on that heightened sort of level where,
Sure.
like, the people don't really act like people. I think, that is especially true in Saltburn.
Mm.
But it is true to some extent in her debut feature, Promising Young Woman, as
Yeah, sure.
well. Yeah, I think she's always operating in these heightened sort of realms, but I also feel like why Wuthering Heights works the most for me out of those three films is because I feel like the setting, vibe, genre, aesthetic matches that kind of sensibility
Totally fair.
better than the contemporary settings of Saltburn or Promising Young
Okay,
Woman.
interesting. Yeah. Well, I can see that. I think that the fantastical nature of the presentation and the location, the time period, it definitely it feels intentionally sort of at odds with itself. It's a little bit there's a little bit of what's the word juxtaposition.
Anachronism.
Sure, yeah, anachronism
There's
in there
there's a lot of that too.
where it's a take on Victorian times. I don't really know what the time period exactly. It doesn't really matter. But
the English Moors.
Yes, it is definitely fucking Moors, Tanner. A lot of run around Moors. And I think that's interesting, and I think that it's not something that we see played around with very much anymore. And if we get something that is set in Victorian times or medieval times or things like that, they're period pieces. This movie's not really that because it feels like it is trying to inject sort of a modern sensibility and cattiness and
certainly it's a dollhouse kind of movie. At times literally, there being literally a dollhouse that the character Isabella,
correct, Isabella.
She plays like with little dolls representations of our characters in this like giant dollhouse playset that she has. But even the production design very much lends itself to this is Emerald Fennell's dollhouse, and she's been very clear. And I'll go back to my adaptation point a little bit. She's been clear about like this film, for all the changes that it has, is what she gleaned from reading Wuthering Heights. Like,
and I think that's cool. Yeah.
I think it's cool, but also down river of that again with everything that the book is about and everything that people who are fans of the book have criticized this movie for. Emerald Fennell, I think you took the wrong lessons away from Wuthering Heights.
Yeah,
it is like a revenge story that has some really complex ideas about like power dynamics, sexual power dynamics, race, class, all of these things, and she's like she translates that into the greatest love story ever told. She translates it into Romeo and Juliet, which is also directly referenced in this film.
So I got a question. You know a little bit more about this novel than me.
Sure.
It's a revenge story. From whose perspective and like upon whom?
Well, the perspective thing is interesting because it's sort of like it's an omniscient third party guy who arrives at the beginning of the novel, arrives to Wuthering Heights and discovers Nellie's novel, the Hong Chow character.
Okay, yeah.
Hong Chow is the one who is retelling the story of Kathy and Heathcliff.
Okay.
So it is like an unrevable narrator.
So it's Nellie's revenge on Kathy for
No.
What the
this
fuck?
Is a it is a this is why Wuthering Heights is
here's the thing is I don't know if it really matters what the novel was.
This does not matter. The film is so greatly different. But generally,
but the reason I asked that is because I didn't pick up on any of that. Because it's not really present in the film. I think that almost every character feels like they're trying to get revenge. And maybe that's like this is a revenge story, and that like applies to 4 of the 5 characters that are relevant to this film. I think that like I don't feel like this is a Heathcliff story or a Kathy story. I feel like this is just kind of like this soup that I'm looking into, and I don't really know what the movie's perspective is. I think going in, I expected a little bit more humanity out of Heathcliff that made him maybe more of the victim, maybe more of Kathy was like manipulating him, that there was this power dynamic, him being a servant and her being higher class than he is. The movie doesn't really play into that because then his power dynamic comes back and she becomes kind of like subservient to him in some ways. Like there are these themes of power dynamics, but it's so unclear what if any perspective the movie has on these themes that I come away being like, what is this movie about?
So I'll do a one sentence thing. The book is broad strokes. The first half, or the stuff that this film covers at least. Heathcliff.
Wait, this is only the first half of the story?
Yes, there's an entire back half that's about like Heathcliff and about like the kids. The second generation. Wow. Yeah. that is rarely adapted in screen adaptations of Wuthering Heights. A
Interesting.
famously difficult book to adapt. I don't know
Sure.
if you picked that up from me trying to recount it to you.
Yeah.
But it is Heathcliff coming back after being a servant for the what is Kathy's family name? What is it? Does anyone you remember?
The Kathy
He comes
family.
back, as he does in the film. He is now wealthy, and
Yeah.
he is seeking revenge on the Linder family.
Okay.
Edgar and Kathy, their whole thing, because he has this rage about about the upper crust, the wealthy
Sure.
people in England, and
Yeah.
so he
That
comes back and tries to break up this
movie.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's kind of the reason why he marries Isabella to like get back at Kathy,
no,
but
of course.
also Edgar. Like,
yeah, but it doesn't feel like a class thing in this movie. It feels like a very personal thing, and it also feels less revenge motivated in like a traditional sense, and more like a sexual revenge, a power revenge kind of thing, rather than like, oh, I want to destroy them. It's well, I mean, I guess it kind of is. But here's my problem: is the revenge element, specifically from Heathcliff, I don't feel is particularly well established in the first chunk of the movie before he leaves. Like, obviously he's jealous, but I don't really see him as a character that has this sort of mean streak in him that comes out in the second half. And so I was really surprised when he comes back, and he's cordial enough at first, but then it quickly devolves into like him really trying to manipulate these parties, and just kind of tear these people apart with the goal of getting Kathy back, but by destroying her, by like breaking her down and destroying her emotions to the point where, like, I assume his goal is she's going to be so emotionally distraught over all of this that she has no choice but to abandon this life and return with him to like try and heal this. But like, again, I don't think that feels particularly well established at the beginning, because, and Tanner, this is like, the movie's like bookended by this. When they're kids, these characters really care about each other and will do anything for one each other, and will take pain for one another and never want to leave each other's side and all this stuff. And then like I mean, I guess it's like sitting in the back of each of their minds, but like the way they treat each other for like the majority of the movie, I'm like, it doesn't feel like the same people. And like, that's why I like that beginning. I'm like, okay, I can see the sort of passion and the like connection that they had from childhood. And I'm like, to me, like, I'm not like, oh, this is problematic because of they like met each other when they're children, or like, these are not issues that I have with the movie.
Yeah, to me, it's like a sibling thing, of course.
But like, that's not one of my problems with it. It just feels like, fair enough, what is established there is not actually, like, I don't see that in those characters as they're grown up and like torturing one another.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. You mentioned the ending earlier as well, and I don't think the ending doesn't work for me, because it tries to have this really sobering, somber tone about like the tragedy. Again, this Romeo and Juliet ending of like, I guess they both don't die. Only Kathy dies. Spoilers. Yeah. But it tries to be like, and it flashes back to them as children and what was lost or whatever.
And I remember seeing that and be like, why are you showing me this? That is such a hard juxtaposition between what I just saw for the last, especially like the last 30 minutes of this movie.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it is indicative of what Fennell kind of gets lost in the sauce of this like saucy, literally like saucy power dynamic romance of like, these people are cheating on each other, and then Heathcliff sort of turns into this sexual like monster, this dom. He marries Isabel and is very upfront with her. Is like, hey, listen, I'm only doing this to make Kathy jealous, and every time I'm with you, I'm going to be thinking of her. And then it gets into like some BDSM stuff between him and Isabel, which she's into, which I think is kind of pretty humorous, obviously.
Here's the thing. I think that that's the most interesting part of the movie, because it feels the most distinct. It feels the most campy. And I think it plays into this sexual tone that the movie wants to have, but does not fully lean into. I think that when you say this movie has a little bit more humor, it feels a little more camp than the other ones, the reason why I disagree is I think that it tries to have its cake and eat it too, in terms of establishing this like dark comedy sexual tone, and then the movie doesn't play with that for like a big chunk of the movie, and then when things are like coming to that head, and they are, having sex in all these different places, and the like manipulation's really leaning in. I'm like, okay, it's coming back, but also the movie's like taking it really seriously. And so I think that I just wish that it was more comedic, frankly. I wish it didn't take itself as seriously, because the opening sequence where it's like the hanging and the boner and like people humping in the streets and all this, and the association between violence and sex. I'm like,
yep.
I was quite taken by that. I'm like, this is a vision. This is unique. You don't see this kind of stuff, especially applied to like this sort of period piece, way back in time kind of thing. I'm like, this is cool. I don't know if I really feel that throughout the rest of the movie.
Okay,
this same kind of like energy where it's like comedy, sex, violence, all intertwined, because I think the comedy kind of leaves at a certain point.
Yeah. Here's what I say, and I want to make something clear, because I think you maybe misinterpreted. Like, I don't think this film is more campy or ridiculous or fun than Promising Young Woman or Saltburn. My point is that, like, the genre, the bodice ripping Victorian England comedy of manners kind of thing is better suited toward those Fennell proclivities than those other films. That is just something that I think meshed and gelled with me a little bit better in this film. Again, that is me trying to put a hat on it, trying to like tie it up in a bow, like the sort of feelings that I have about the movie. I was like, I think that's it.
Yeah, sure.
Or maybe it is literally just I am getting better suited and accustomed to the thing that Fennell does.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel that they're better executed in this film just by the nature of the setting and everything like that. Again, of course, still in my mind, completely severing and divorcing this from the source material that it is supposedly based on. So anyway, I also wanted to address something that a point of disagreement that I have. I think Robbie and Elordi are good in the movie.
Sure. Are you disagreeing with me? I don't think
sorry. I think maybe I misinterpreted you saying the characters are bad until the performances are.
Here's my take on the performances. I think they're good. I think they're well cast. I think Robbie is particularly good. I think Elordi has a physical presence. I hate his fucking accent. He sounds so flat and monotone, and oh my, this is. I'm like.
Well, he's trying to have this like deep, dark, the handsome, suave, sort of gravelly. He's playing the role.
I don't buy it.
He's playing the role of like the tall, dark, and handsome kind of like fan fiction figure that all of these fucking stories have. Whether you look at them, on a website or a book or a Netflix series or a Tubi series or whatever the fuck, they all have a guy like this who is like he's the bad boy. He's bad. Like he's a little dangerous, but I like that about him, and he's totally playing that role. And I understand why Fennell kind of wants someone like him, obviously outside of Elordi being a sex symbol unto himself. He's hot and up and coming right now, and he is kind of the only guy in Hollywood that can do this kind of. I mean, he's like 6'5" or whatever. He's got a really imposing kind of figure, and even his jawline and everything like that is very unique. So I totally understand why you cast him, and I think he fits the role well.
So do I. It's literally just the accent. I have no other problems with his performance. I think the accent leads to some of his lines like really falling flat for me.
Yeah, and there was a weird not dichotomy. I don't know what word I'm looking for right now. But the Kathy is supposed to be even in this film like a teenager or early 20s, like maybe mid 20s by the end of the film. Margot Robbie is 35, and she looks great. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, of course.
But I think there was even a thing that eventually clicked and worked for me that like. It's having this adult woman continue to act in the fashion as if she were like a spoiled teenager.
Yeah,
because that is kind of
how old is Elordi?
Elordi he's 20. He's 28.
Okay, so there's a 7-year gap between them, something like that. And maybe it's because I've seen Elordi in less stuff, and I've been familiar with Margot Robbie for a while. I see them as quite distant in age.
I agree.
And so. I was surprised when I saw the beginning of this movie, and it's like, basically they're supposed to be the same age, and then when they grow up, and I'm like, I don't know what age they're supposed to be, and that's not one of my issues with the movie. I think that it's kind of fun to sort of like create this this pastiche where the characters can be any age and they're acting like children and stuff like that's not an issue. I just thought it was funny when I was like, 'Cause again, I'm not familiar with this story. That when
Right.
they're it's like they find Heathcliff as a child, and he's like the same age as Kathy. I'm like,
Yeah.
I didn't
He's even
expect that.
maybe he even kind of look it's oh fuck it's the kid from Adolescence.
Yeah, I
I
don't know
don't
what you're
know
saying.
what the actor's name is. But like he even looks a little bit older than the
Oh,
child
I
actor
agree.
they get
Yeah,
for Kathy too. So I'm like, is he supposed to be older? I don't know. Anyway, I digress. But it's something that worked for me sort of along the road because
sure,
initially I was kind of put off by Margot Robbie playing like an 18-year-old or a 16-year-old at the beginning of this film or
sure,
whatever. But again, it eventually worked for me, where especially as we shifted into the second half, where like she is supposed to be this stunted, petulant kind of
yeah, of course,
teenage, like grown woman whose worst tendencies are ignited
yeah,
again when her teenage love, 28-year-old teenage love
yeah, yeah,
returns back into the narrative. And this is my thing. My favorite part of the movie is when they are fucking with each other.
sure.
I think that's my
And,
favorite part of the
yeah,
story as well.
in multiple ways.
In multiple ways, of course. But like when they're trying, there's this one-upsmanship as they haven't like consummated their reconnection quite yet. But Heathcliff, he's like not sharing any stories about his time away or whatever, and Kathy is sort of like put off by this, and she's like, "What the hell? I thought you should." He used to be like head over heels for me. Like, why can't we pick up directly where we left off, kind of thing? Why isn't he, fawning over me like he used to?
Yeah,
And then they sort of have this tete-a-tete back and forth where Kathy is even sort of drawing Isabel into this and sort of throwing her under the bus and
yeah,
embarrassing her and her clear like obsession and fantasy about Heathcliff as well. And Heathcliff grabs onto that, and he's like, "Maybe I will start dating Isabel. Who's to say? You're of course
yeah,
married.
yeah.
You can't have all this that I got going on here, Kathy." Like I like that dynamic. I like that back and forth. That is very sort of like getting to the fan fiction
Yes,
kind of
yes.
thing that I was talking
Hmm.
about. That the modern conception of like pop romance that again I am usually so distanced from, but in here in this context with these actors, I am kind of in the bag for.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to bring up the supporting cast because I think Isabella's the only one that works for me. I think that she might be the
Sure.
character I'm most interested in by the end of the movie. I think that her position in the cast is interesting, especially as it grows over the course of the film. I think she's the one that leans the most into. She's kind of the comedic relief character of the
Was she,
movie.
yeah, Alison Oliver, who's of course the sister in Saltburn as well,
Oh,
Jacob
okay.
Elordi's character's sister in Saltburn. She was sort of like a good comedic part of that film as well, and she
Yeah.
does a similar kind of thing here. I kind of feel that she's made a bit too much of a laughing stock. That's
Sure.
kind of what I felt in the film. Is that anytime she's on screen, like we are always
Yeah.
laughing
Yeah.
at
I think
her.
that's probably true.
Uh, but also like you take that and you look at any other side character, and it's meant like they're also meant to be like a ridiculous sort of pawn in this chess game, if we can
Yeah.
equate it to that. Or like Edgar is also like he's the cuck, and it's funny that he's being cucked basically, and that he's
Kind
sort of
of.
powerless to stop this love between them,
Yeah.
and even their father
Oh yeah.
who is intimidating and can be scary, even when Kathy and Heathcliff are
Yeah.
adults. But like, maybe this is just me, but I think I was the only one in my theater who laughed at this reveal when he's dead, and we do like a crash zoom out to the giant piles of liquor
It's
bottles
amazing.
flanking him
Yeah, yeah.
in the corners, and like I'm like that is a patently ridiculous
Yes,
image
it's
that Fennell
amazing.
is putting on screen right now, and yeah, production design wise, it's pretty cool and impressive. But I'm like, this is a joke, right? This
Yes,
has
it
to be
is. Yes.
like a punchline that we're doing. It's so heightened.
Yeah, I think that the father characters, like in terms of like performance or me thinking that they fit the tone that I thought the movie
Mm,
was going for. I think it's Isabel and the father that really hit the most for me.
yeah.
The two that I'm most disappointed by are Edgar and Nellie. I think they're
Oh
really
sure. Yeah.
flat. I think that they don't get a lot of personality. There are touches of backstory that I find intriguing about both of them. The movie does not care to delve into that either of them at
No.
all.
No.
Edgar is like, here's my problem with Edgar. He's just a good guy. Like he has
Yeah,
no like
you
even
were
when
totally expecting there to be a darkness to him, and manipulation to him,
Tanner,
like
a
some sort
layer,
of something.
a
A
layer.
layer.
I think my problem is as things are like really ramping up, and the only emotion other than like being either suave and slash or in love with Kathy that we get out of him is when he is frustrated by the fact that this is all happening and his wife is being dramatic and she, like not allowed to see him or like won't allow him to see her for months and months and months and then he gets mad and I'm like, yeah, he should be. And he should be mad by
Exactly.
all this. And so I'm like,
Absolutely.
is he like the audience in? But like that seems like a way at odds with like the fact that he's not the protagonist or even like the
Mhm.
secondary protagonist, and he's just like a side character, and he's not very interesting. I'm like, he's the only one that's like acting reasonably in this. You know, you run into Margot Robbie, you have the chance to marry her. Go. I don't blame
No
you,
harm,
guy.
no foul. No
No,
harm, no
no
foul in
harm,
there,
no foul.
pal.
And then you live with her, you treat her well, you
Yeah.
give her what she wants. Like you know,
You
there's
make a room out of skin for her. It's normal.
it's normal.
It's not actual skin, but
Yeah, we'll talk about the imagery in a second, but like,
so
I,
yeah.
he's just so fucking boring, Tanner. Like, I really thought that there would be some sort of like backstory element or
No.
twist or like again layer to him and it maybe a dynamic with Nellie that we didn't explore or a dynamic with Isabella. Like, there's you feel like maybe there's something there, but then like. What is their dynamic? Why is she here? What like is she there to amuse him? Like I don't get
These
who this
are
person is. Like this is
yeah.
just he's so
These are
flat.
these are the undeniable flaws in the film that I cannot rebuke, that
Yeah.
I cannot refute. I'm just like, yeah, his character is fucking nothing.
Yeah.
And Nellie, I mean, God bless her, Hong Chow, doing the work, like also completely sort of rebuked by the narrative and
Yeah,
the
totally.
screenplay and everything. Like, and first of all, because you might have to help me track the order of events here. Is it there's the moment when Kathy discovers that Nellie knew that Heathcliff was listening during this
Yes.
impactful conversation where Heathcliff hears her say, "I cannot marry. I cannot marry Heathcliff. It would degrade me." And he
Yes.
storms off. But she's like, "But I love him."
Yes.
Yeah. At which point this gets to like the messiness of their whole relationship. That again kind of drew me in inexplicably. I was like, "The girl, then marry him. It doesn't matter. You're already poor. Like you're not a high society
Yeah.
lady by any means."
Well, that's the one
Anyway,
layer of Kathy's character that I do actually like. And again, I'm not
sure,
familiar
yeah,
with the original work of the other adaptations, but I think that the
mhm,
idea of Kathy seeing herself as someone who is a lady in some way, and it
yeah,
comes from a
a
they have
temporarily
land
embarrassed, yeah, yeah,
and his
temporarily embarrassed heiress.
well, temporarily, but for her whole life,
Yeah, of
or
course.
like as she was growing
I
up.
mean, in the I believe that's a John Steinbeck quote that all Americans
Uh,
view themselves, all poor Americans view themselves as temporarily embarrassed millionaires.
oh, gotcha, yeah.
Yeah,
But I like this sort of layer where, uh, she sees the sort of difference between her and Heathcliff as he's like, she acts like she is really rich when the reality is like they have a home, but like this, and they have servants, but otherwise
hmm
like this place is kind of in shambles. They seem to have no power. Her father's kind of a drunk fuck up. Like I
yeah.
think that
He
element
gambles
is
away.
interesting.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is largely abandoned, and I think naturally so by the progression of the plot. But I like that element. Um, but so your point about Nellie, is that
yes,
Kathy discovers that Nellie knew, and
yeah,
then Nellie's like,
and
and Kathy's like, leave.
Kathy's like, "You're fired. Get the fuck out of here." At which point Nellie
Doesn't
tells
leave.
Edgar, doesn't leave, does tell Edgar that Kathy is sleeping with Heathcliff, right? Or that's around the point that Edgar finds out.
I think so. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
It becomes just slurry. I don't really
yeah,
know.
I understand. I understand. Eventually, though, there's a conversation between. It's in this argument that Kathy and Ellie have, where Kathy says, "Well, you don't get it. You let that happen. You hate me because no one has ever loved you. You were paid to be my best friend. You've never had any real connection." And at which point I'm like, anything Nellie does from this point forward is kind of justified to me.
Sure.
Which does ultimately kind of pay out in she doesn't believe Kathy when she says, Kathy's pregnant in like the entire last hour of this
Can't
movie.
tell.
You can't, yeah. But Kathy is, sort of locked away in her tower after Heathcliff has gone off to Wuthering Heights and lives with Isabel now.
Yeah.
And Nellie is burning all of the letters that Heathcliff sends to Kathy, begging her to marry him or like see him again. Nellie does not believe Kathy when she says, "I think the baby died." Like, I think the baby
Jenna,
is still
question.
I had a miscarriage.
Did you?
Yeah. No,
no, I didn't.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Which is why, again, I don't blame Nellie for not, believing her.
Yeah.
Because it's established that Kathy is.
This is a situation where I don't necessarily believe this woman every time she says something, because she's also like she has this track record of just like fancifying things and like just like saying whatever she needs to
she's locked herself in in her ivory tower, basically, with her husband who loves her and is like, "Hey, maybe stop cheating on me all the time." And she's like, "Oh, if I did that, I might die." What she literally does. And so it's of course,
but Tanner,
all like
that's a perfect thing. What you just said.
Yeah.
Is you said that's ostensibly a line from the movie. That's ostensibly what the tone of, especially the second half of the film is, and I rolled my eyes. That's I understand the camp. I understand the target audience, but my reaction to that is like, oh brother, like, and that's kind of how I felt.
That's totally
for like,
fair.
Especially the second half of this movie. I'm like, okay, all right, I see what you're doing. All right, like, but like, I just don't know what I'm supposed to feel. I'm like, I don't like these characters. They're doing things that don't make a lot of sense. They're acting towards each other in ways that are totally anachronistic, and like, if that's the goal, more power to you. But I'm like, what do you want me to be like? Oh no, this is like, I'm like bought into this romance. I'm bought into the drama here. When these characters are acting in like these ridiculous ways and saying these things that I'm just like, you're not a person.
You're not a serious person, you know, to quote some Logan Roy here.
Yeah.
No, but like, again, Tucker, I feel like I keep returning to this. Like, inexplicably, that is kind of why I like this, is
totally
because
fine.
it is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
And like, there's almost like a reality TV kind of thing to like, I love seeing these messy people just fuck up their lives even more.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And I that's just kind of what I was in for. But again, I think we maybe talked about it briefly, but like, the ending doesn't work for me because then it tries to like downshift all the way to be like, but this is also like a real romance that Kathy and Heathcliff had, and they were meant to feel really sad about this in the end. And
exactly, and that's
in
my theater,
in my theater, lots of sniffles happening.
Tanner, brother,
that was going on.
Brother, I can't. No, You're not real people. I was like, audience member.
At which point I was like, broad strokes, I understand that like there's some tragedy going on here, but I'm like, this is just not the tone that the movie was having for the previous 2 hours and 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's like when Heathcliff is like riding the horse across the thing and like, get the doctor, and I'm like, like Heathcliff.
See, still doing that, I'm like, okay, I can see this. I'm with it. Like, this is all fitting in genre convention for me. This is all gelling still. But then, when he's like tearily by her side, and Emerald Fennell's literally trying to do like the Romeo and Juliet ending with the veil over her and in her on her deathbed or whatever. I'm just like, this is not quite what I was getting out of the rest of the film.
Yeah. I think really the last element to sort of dig into is the production value, the imagery, because that's, I think, undeniably where the movie is at its strongest, and why it is still an experience that I recommend people check out, and why, even though I like this movie significantly less than I like Saltburn and A Promising Young Woman, I'm like, Emerald Fennell has a vision. She is a unique and talented creative, and I cannot wait to see what she does next. And I'm glad that she's speaking to this different kind of audience. She's bringing a higher budget female perspective to the theatrical experience. I'm like, these are things that I think are important, and I really respect her for. And obviously, I like her other two movies. Like, I'm not like down on her as a director that she made a movie that I thought was mid. Like, there is a talent here and a vision with these obsidian obelisks and these the Wuthering Heights made of like the cleanest polished bricks you've ever seen in your life. and the blood red walls and the hands that are holding candles and the flesh walls. Like I'm like, oh, like I get chills like describing this. I'm like, this is like powerful, amazing imagery. The blood red river that like runs by their home. I'm like you're working with something here. Like this is amazing stuff.
Again, it lends itself to the storybook sort of heightened thing that I think that the Emerald Fennell is apparently gleaned from this very complex and dark book, Wuthering Heights, which again I must question how exactly she got all of this from that.
Yeah.
But translated onto screen, divorced from that source material, I'm like, this is kind of objectively really cool and interesting.
Yeah.
Like all the production design work and the dollhouse feeling that I alluded to earlier.
Yeah.
There's a moment where I think it's in the trailer too. Margot Robbie's eating a strawberry that's like the size of like I don't even know. It's like it's bigger than her hand. She takes a chunk out of this. Tear to pieces. It's bigger than her hand. But it's like that is obviously ridiculous.
Yes.
It's something that you might see like you might do with like a doll or whatever, or Tucker, dare I say, a Barbie. It has like giant food, like cartoon level food, and there's multiple examples of that. Down to the idea that Edgar makes a room that is meant to represent Kathy's skin, complete with like freckles and everything
and
like
veins,
that.
Tanner. The freckles fine. The veins are what really make it on.
And you see that, and like the actors are interacting with that.
Yes,
Jacob Elordi licked that damn thing for
it's
crying out loud.
It's excellent.
And all the costuming and everything is also excellent.
There's this one moment, Tanner, when Kathy finds out that Nellie knows, and there's this hard cut to her wearing like basically a fucking vampire outfit,
yes,
like the black and red dress. I'm like, you're not hiding anything here. This is not subtle at all. I'm like clapping my hands there because I think that the ridiculousness and the campiness and the storybook tone is not portrayed for me as thoroughly as I would have wished in the tone of the writing. But it is through the production design. It is through these costumes. It is through the fact that they're always wearing these crazy, elaborate, colorful things. And I'm like, that nail, like, it really nails it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. So all of that I also liked, and just lent itself to the sort of tone that I feel works about Wuthering Heights more so for me than, like, again, the contemporary settings of Promising Young Woman and Saltburn, which are also attempting to make these bigger, grander points. We didn't really talk about the themes because, again, I don't think that Wuthering Heights is like that driven by those kind of things. I think it's driven by stuff that is baser and more accessible and simpler, which is I can.
This is a primal movie, not an intellectual one.
Yeah, it is. If Emerald Fennell tried to put the actual themes of the novel Wuthering Heights into her Wuthering Heights adaptation, I could see myself totally hating this thing and totally being disconnected from it because, frankly, they are kind of the themes that she's tried to hit in Promising Young Woman and Saltburn. That I'm like, you fumbled at the 1 yard line here. Like, you can't end this movie. You can't put a hat on this thing.
Yeah.
You cannot cap off the conversation that you're having, and it makes the whole thing ring hollow for me. And he's like, did you really get what you were saying in these two previous films? Whereas with Wuthering Heights, again, it is primal. It is crowd pleasing. It is for, frankly, what again, kind of interestingly sociologically, for a 2025 letterboxed 20-something Gen Z audience.
It's 26 now, baby.
2026. Excuse me. 2026. It is. It knows its target audience and seems to have cultivated it very, very well. Even the idea, and this is not an original thought, this is from a critic named Robert Daniels, who I follow. He's like, even the idea, because frankly, Wuthering Heights is not a super explicit movie. It has things that push boundaries, but there's no nudity.
No.
There is all the sex is like fully clothed, basically, which is sort of a Victorian England costume drama kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not worried that there's not nudity in this. I think it would have made it more striking. I think it would have made it more impactful. But I'm like, I don't need it. The movie is laden with these tones and themes and the thoughts and the characters. Like you could see it on their faces that that sex and these primal urges are something that the movie is very concerned about. So I'm like, you don't need to show it. Like that's not one of my criticisms of the movie, that they don't show fucking ass.
Well, yeah, I think it also reminds me, because like there's no nudity in Promising a Woman either. The moment I'm thinking of when I say that is the ending of Saltburn, at which point I'm like, how much of that was Emerald Fennell being like being a freak, and how much of it is Barry Keoghan being like, yeah, I'll show my dick, I don't fucking care.
Sure.
Whereas, like, would any of the stars of any of these other films be like, yeah, I'll do nudity in your movie? And like, yeah. I think that's probably the difference. Is like, Elordi gonna hang dong, or is Barry Keoghan be like, yeah, I'll do it for a fucking, I'll spin around and dance to a 90s pop song. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
But the point I was making was that, it's largely a first half of the movie thing, but this difficulty to translate like this innate sort of pulsing, powerful love and sexual attraction into actual physical contact is kind of an interesting sociological point about Gen Z's relationship to sex in media, film, kind of thing, which is sort of pushed ashore or like pushed aside by the success of things like romantasy books, heated rivalry being a social media phenomenon, and to a certain extent the presumed success of Wuthering Heights as well, even though I think it is a little bit more toned down than those kind of things, but it's still playing with these very ideas about like attraction and sex, and like when it is appropriate to have it, if it's appropriate to have these feelings, and how acceptable it is to engage in them with certain people, or whatever.
Yeah.
In certain settings.
Tanner, what kind of score are you gonna give this puppy?
Again, this is so tough. I liked watching it. I think it is kind of interesting, but also pretty vapid and silly and fleeting.
Sure.
I don't know if it would hold up from beyond a rewatch, so I have to ding it at some points there. I'm going to say a 6 out of 10.
Sure. Yeah, I'll say just below 5. I'll give it like a 4.8.
Okay.
There's strong elements to it, but it doesn't come together at the end. And when the movie is ending and my thoughts are like, "Oh brother, long slow nose exhale," like good. That's not a compliment for the movie.
It is kind of how I felt about the endings of Promising Young Woman and Saltburn. So I totally understand where you're coming from with that sentiment.
Well, that is it, everyone. Thank you very much for watching our review of Wuthering Heights, directed by Emerald Fennell. Again, leave your thoughts in the comments, join our Discord server, like and subscribe, all of that. See you next time.